Nearly 40 years ago,
the President of the United States,
President Reagan, warned the world of an evil empire.
If history teaches anything, it teaches that simple-minded appeasement or wishful thinking about our adversaries is folly. It means the betrayal of our past, the squandering of our freedom.
Reagan squashed it. But like a cockroach, it really can't be killed. Now, a new economic evil empire is forming right before our very eyes. Today, chaos plagues not only America, but the world.
A massive protest over frozen bank deposits turned violent in Zhengzhou in China. Police clashing with demonstrators on Sunday. Demonstrators who were angry that some rural banks have kept millions of dollars frozen since April.
Together, China and Russia are forming a new economic coalition. And the U.S. dollar and our way of life has never been more at risk. Tonight, I'll show you how world elites, including our own leaders, seem to be helping along this plan. Tonight, the new axis of evil, preparing for economic war with Russia and China.
Hello, America. One of these days, I'm going to say, hey, you know that spooky thing you just saw? Not going to happen. You're fine. Not going to happen tonight, but maybe one day. There is an economic axis of evil forming in the world right now, and it kind of makes me wonder why our own leaders are trying to help this national suicide here at home. Why would Nancy Pelosi travel to Taiwan in the middle of all of this, helping it along? You'll understand by the end of the program today. I'll get back to that. I'm also going to show you economic and military forces that are forming up right now. They aren't hiding what they're doing. They've released formal declarations on their intentions. But the media and our own government have refused to talk about it to you. I'm going to show you what they're planning to do in their own words. But before I do, before I get into what's happening abroad, I want to touch on something that shows trouble here at home. I've been saying now for over a decade that progressives, for what they want to happen, they have to first achieve world parity. What I mean by that is, you know, for a long time we were like, let's bring the third world up. Let's keep bringing them. They'll grow and stronger and stronger and stronger. Well, that wasn't good enough. Everybody has to have what we have. Well, that's not reasonable, especially if you believe in global warming. So what they're going to do, instead of bringing everybody up, they're going to bring America down. We must come down to everyone else's level. That is what is happening. This obviously means that you and I, the plebes, are going to experience a little bit of pain. This is going to hurt a lot. But they don't give a crap. They don't. In fact, our pain seemingly is funny to them. They're laughing their butts off over this. I'm going to give you an update on something I showed you a couple of weeks ago. Do you remember that deleted article on the UN website, The Benefits of World Hunger? I called it satire. I called it a joke. They were trying to make a joke, make a point through a joke. The United Nations and pretty much everyone else said the same thing. But it really doesn't matter. Being satire is not an excuse. The point is, global suffering was funny to them. Well, now the person who actually wrote the article has responded. He told the Foundation for Economic Freedom it wasn't satire. He was being literal. Under the amazing do-over, which I can't say without being banned, we're going to go hungry. And the Roman Senate, also known as the global elite, are all okay with this. What it means to them is that us plebes will be more incentivized to produce for them. This article is incredible. They believe pain is good for us because then we'll work harder. Pain is coming. They know it's coming, and they're lying about it. And they're laughing their butts off as it all goes down. And I know that sounds like hyperbole, but it was on full display over the weekend. Kamala Harris, with a smirk, cast the tie-breaking vote on Sunday. Look at that. It's hysterically named Inflation Reduction Act. This is Chuck Schumer, after he walked out after the vote. Why are they all so smiley and so happy? Well, because they finally pulled it off. They just changed the name, couple of things, and we now have the Build Back Better bill, which I said cannot ever pass. Well, are they laughing because they named it the Inflation Reduction Act, knowing full well it was anything but that, and we all went along with it? The inflation numbers came out today. It's still the highest it's been in decades. The president actually lied to the American people and said we have zero inflation. That is not even close to true. Inflation works like compounding interest. So while the inflation rate was last month was 9.5, you compare it from year to year. Last year, it was 5.6. This time, it's 8.5. I'm loose on the numbers here. You have to check yourself. But you combine those two numbers, okay? Our inflation over the last year, 12 months, is now officially 14%. It's not zero. So, pray tell us, how does spending billions of dollars more going to make inflation better? Well, it probably won't. It probably is going to make things worse. But I'm going to explain because there's a little nuance in this. They can't come out and say, well, it's because we're going to impoverish you. The Inflation Act, this is what it really is. They slid in the word reduction in the middle to appease people like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. And because they believe we're stupid, which we are not, we would never notice. Oh, it's the Patriot Act. I must be a patriot if I support it. They are counting on not just our stupidity, but our ignorance. You must educate yourself and understand the finance. Did you understand that inflation is like compound interest? You have to understand these things or they're going to get away with the murder of millions of people through starvation. They hope that we are idiots or we're just too busy on our phones, scrolling and looking at the next TikTok video. They think we're idiots when they say no family making under $400,000 a year will see a cent, not one thin dime, in an increase in taxes. They hope we won't put two and two together, that their new taxes on billionaires and companies won't affect us plebes. Just that alone. But we know what happens. If you were just targeting the people who made over $400,000 a year, suddenly if those people and those companies have to pay more of their money to the government, prices will go up. Company has to pass that price on. Expansion also stops. That means less new jobs. In some cases, that means firing some of their workers. In some cases, it'll mean lowering their wages. These are the taxes that the left never likes to talk about, but they are taxes whether they like it or not. Same with inflation. That is a hidden tax. But you can count on some people in the media to tell you the truth. I hope I'm one of those people. So let's look at the actual tax rates for every bracket. Joe Biden and his cronies, which include the mainstream media, have declared ad nauseum that no one will feel any impact that makes under $400,000 a year. Well, let's actually look. This is from the Senate Joint Committee on Taxation, and it shows what the Inflation Reduction Act will do to each tax bracket. Check out the average tax rate now versus the proposal that people like Harris and Schumer were all cracking up over. Look at this. People making under $10,000 a year will see an increase of 3.1%. 10 to 30,000 won't change, but every other income from the person making over 30,000 up to $1 million, everyone sees a tax increase. Well, Glenn, 10,000, 3.1, that's, that's what, $310. Big deal. That's a month's rent for somebody who's making that amount of money. They are lying and laughing while simultaneously trying to sneak a tax increase on nearly every American, except, mark my words, except for the billionaires. So let's call this what it is. This is a middle-class cash grab. This is the destruction of the middle class. And they are weaponizing the IRS to ensure they get their grubby little hands on your money. The Inflation Reduction Act, it will make the IRS and their IRS agents larger than the Pentagon, the State Department, the FBI, and Border Patrol combined. It includes $80 billion in funding to hire 87,000 additional IRS employees. Now, the IRS already has 79,000 in personnel. The IRS agents, 79,000 of them are running around. They are going to more than double their size. Do you really think we buy that all these new federal agents are just going to be used to go after people like George Soros? I don't think so. The 1%ers? No. I want you to see this. This is from the Washington Post. Over half of the audits done last year by Joe Biden's IRS were directed at people making less than $75,000 a year. Over half. The next group was those making $75,000 to $200,000. In other words, going off the data from what Biden is currently doing, they are directly targeting not millionaires and billionaires, but the middle class. This is a middle class cash grab, period. Now, why would they do that? Anyone who doesn't comply, check out what they also have in addition to the 87,000 additional IRS employees. They're going to have 2,148 IRS law enforcement officers. Why do they need cops? They're going to have about 5,000 weapons, including fully automatic weapons. And you know what? Over 5 million rounds of ammunition. Why do they have weapons? Why does the Department of Ed suddenly have an enforcement team? Here's why. They are raising taxes on almost everyone, but they are specifically targeting the middle class. Why? Because to slow down inflation, what they always say is we're just trying to, the economy is overheated, which means you have too much money, you're spending too much money. So to slow down inflation, they make things more expensive. They do that by loans, etc., and taxes. They take more of your money, okay? And then you don't have that money to spend. And apparently, even if that means at the barrel of a gun. They want to take your money. Remember, the goal by the this plan is that you will own nothing by 2030. Well, how do you do that? How do you bring us down to parity with the rest of the world, with Mexico? It's got to happen, and it's got to happen fast. They want to disarm us, yet they are arming the president. This is a private presidential army that they are building. They need parity in the global decline, and the world is changing right in front of our eyes. An economic axis of evil is emerging. This is the result of Ukraine and what Biden did in Ukraine. And in the middle of all this, Nancy Pelosi was undermining her own president when she went to Taiwan. Why would she do that? Is she stupid? Complicit? Drunk? But what she did do is escalate the timeline for what is coming. And I'll show you that next. All right, there are so many things that you have to keep up with, and I don't want to add, instead of saying it that way, I don't want to add another log to your fire. Here's what I do want to do. I want to make things easier for you if we can. I think about, every time I pump gas, I think about how is the average American doing this? How do you do it? Most people are just scraping by. That's why we really try to do our best on all of these programs, because I know what your subscription costs. I know $10 a month is a lot. American Financing is one of our sponsors, and they have been working for people like you for 20 years. I have seen them through the banking collapse, and I saw what happened to their customers. Their customers didn't lose their homes because they're not incentivized to give you a mortgage that is not in your best interest. They work for you, not the banks. No tricks, no obligations. And they're not going to try to convince you to do something that isn't good for you and your family. I've known them for about 15 years. It's American financing. They'll help you save a ton of money if they can with your credit card debt, your mortgage, et cetera, et cetera. Equity is very high in your house right now, but that's going to slip away. Please call American Financing at 800-906-2440 or go to americanfinancing.net and see how they can help you today. In one of the most bizarre acts by a sitting member of Congress, Nancy Pelosi undermined the foreign policy of the United States and her own president from her own party. She landed in Taiwan. We saw the after effects of it. The Biden administration is trying to play, everything cool now, but we know it wasn't cool. We know he didn't support this visit just weeks before she landed. Okay, how? Well, he told reporters straight up that his Pentagon did not support the trip. He had a 2-hour phone call with President Xi, the Chinese communist leader, and he said, "Those who play with fire will perish by it." That sounds like a less than perfect phone call. The stakes were insanely high. Here's the head of the UN, without mentioning Taiwan directly, but with an ominous message.
The clouds that parted following the end of the Cold War are gathering once more. We have been extraordinarily lucky so far, but luck is not a strategy, nor is it a shield from geopolitical tensions boiling over into nuclear conflict. Today, humanity is just one misunderstanding, one miscalculation away from nuclear annihilation.
Oh, just one miscalculation away from nuclear annihilation. Okay. This was said one day before Pelosi arrived in Taipei. It was also said the same day this message was broadcast on state-backed TV tower in Moscow. China, Russia is with you. Nearly everyone, save a few, were in agreement that what she was doing was dangerous. Even Barack Obama's ambassador to China said her actions made Biden look weak, and that's got to be damn near impossible. He said it was dangerous and irresponsible, and that her explanation seemed disingenuous. Well, Nancy Pelosi not being sincere or hiding something? What? So what's really going on here? Why is she risking war and doing stuff that is against the majority of her party, the GOP, and pretty much everybody else on the planet? Well, Politico pointed out it could be a legacy thing. Her recklessness could be something to tie a little bow on what she started back in the 90s. Personally, I don't think she's that principled. The only thing we do know about Nancy Pelosi and her husband and their son is that they love money as a family. By the way, did you know her son went on that trip and was doing business with, some of the people she was meeting with? Did you know that? Sounds a little like Hunter Biden without the hookers and the crack. But let's focus on just her relationship with her husband. Their story is very typical. If you live in the, typical banana republic or kleptocracy. When Pelosi was elected to Congress somewhere in the late 1700s, her net worth was about $3 million. Wow. Congress has been very, very good to the Pelosis. By 2008, their wealth had ballooned to $31 million. Wow. That is not bad beans for a meager public servant. Well, it's not because she was a public servant. They're master investors. And it just took getting elected to public office to truly unlock that secret. By the end of Obama's term and 8 years of the Democrats ruling the government, Nancy Pelosi's wealth doubled to $61 million. And you know what? Just 2 years later, you know what happened? It doubled again. Now their net worth shot up to $114 million. I have got to talk to their investors. I mean, Who's giving them advice? What am I saying? They're just brilliant people. You know, he's drunk all the time. She's drunk all the time. That's because of all these great investment ideas. Or they're privy to some sort of information that the rest of us don't have access to. Kind of like the sale of $5 million in computer chip stock before Congress voted on a recent semiconductor bill. I'm sure they don't talk. She's never talked to him about business, I'm sure. Anyway, probably unrelated, but maybe, just maybe, the Pelosi's are that good. Remember, they double their millions every couple of years. That's skill. Surely Taiwan has nothing to do with their own little private cash machine, right? Actually, you know what? Pelosi recently explained her connection to China, and I think this makes perfect sense. It'll make you feel better. This is why she went. Watch.
When I was a little girl, I was told at the beach if I dug a hole deep enough, we would reach China. So we've always felt a connection there.
Okay. All right. So the reason she went against the wishes of her president, the Pentagon, risking global war, is because Daddy told me when I was a little girl that I could dig all the way to China, and I've always had a special desire to go to China, you know, and it was harder in the mid-1700s when I was a kid. Okay, I'm sure it had nothing to do with her husband's stock trading of companies that make computer chips. It has nothing to do with, at the same time, Nancy is working on a semiconductor bill. It surely has nothing to do with the fact that the largest semiconductor manufacturer, TSMC, is right there in Taiwan, right? I mean, surely with all of this heat, Nancy Pelosi would be smart enough not to be seen anywhere near Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturers. I mean, it just wouldn't. Oh, crap. Pelosi to meet with Taiwan's biggest semiconductor. All right, pay no attention to that. Okay, she had a little sit down, maybe some tea with TSMC, the bosses there. But I want to point out the Pelosi's don't own any actual stock in TSMC. Whew. Okay. Now, just a little caveat, they do have a, quote, significant stake in the asset management firm Alliance Bernstein, and Alliance owns over 1.46 million shares in TSMC. But, okay, I'm not saying this might double the Pelosi's millions again, but I'm not saying that either, you know? I mean, this is the kind of stuff that does tend to double your millions. What clever stock traders they are, right? All you have to do is fly around the world and meet with company executives and gather information. That happens all the time in business. Oh, yeah, except they also hold public office, or she does, that passes the beneficial legislation. Boy, that's starting to look shady. This is what truly drives Nancy Pelosi. Have you seen her refrigerators with all of that lovely ice cream? She's no ideologue, outside of the ideology of money, money, money. But there are ideologues within the government right now. They believe in the Davos line of you will own nothing and you will be happy, because they're the ones who you'll be renting everything from. They are the ones also coincidentally lying to you about the Inflation Reduction Act. They have to lie, because taking the richest country on the planet from rich to nothing is going to cause a lot of pain. And all of this is happening as an alliance of enemies is building a parallel economy that exists outside the dollar and the Western banking system. Pelosi's visit, Ukraine, all of this could have been all about money, but it accelerated the construction of the economic axis of evil. China is on the verge of something historic, and whatever happens, things will never be the same. I'll show you back in a minute. Homeowners, you should be aware. You might already be the victim of home title theft, and it's going to leave you where you didn't even have a clue until somebody knocks on the door. And they're like, Sheriff, we got to have you evacuate this house because you're in default. And you're like, what? Your name might not even be on the title to your home. And here's how you'll find out. My partners at Home Title Lock have a special free offer for you. If you just go to HomeTitleLock.com, you just enter your address for free, no obligation home title scan. This is how you're going to discover if someone is already camping out on your home's title. The title to your home is the only document that proves you actually own it, and it is so easy to take that away from you. Somebody just forges your title. It's easy, really. He can take out loans in your name, forge your name on a document stating that you sold him the new house, or I hate to say he, it could be a she. Women can do all kinds of things. Women can be criminals too. First things first, let's make sure your home title is secure in your name right now. You can do that by going on to HomeTitleLock.com using the radio promo radio, and then enter your address for free. There is no obligation for the title scan, and that's a $100 value free at HomeTitleLock.com. Make sure you use the promo code RADIO. HomeTitleLock.com, code RADIO. Pelosi's visit to Taiwan has caused war drums from China. Bigly. China, bigly. I don't know when we have seen China so visibly mad, really ever. Newt Gingrich went to Taiwan in 1997 when he was the House Speaker, and China was like, meh. Why? Why do they care so much now and they didn't care then? Because in the 1990s, they were not on the verge of surpassing us as the world superpower. They were in the middle of their economic miracle. Things were booming, but that is not the case anymore. First of all, they are up, they're chomping at the bit, ready to become the world leader, but they're also having serious economic problems. China basically has been following the model preached about by the World Economic Forum. Basically, print the money, spend as much as you want, screw the debt, build, 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 build. You do all of that with special public-private partnerships. China and Klaus are good buddies. Of course, the Western's version of that, which we can't say or will be scrubbed. Our model is about everything green. They don't really care about any of that. China was just building to build. The point is, ultimately, a cleaner world or just money. It's always been about public-private partnerships and control. That is the definition of fascism. China has that in spades. But as I showed you a couple of weeks ago with Sri Lanka, the amazing do-over isn't working out too well for China. They could be on the verge of major collapse and making Pelosi's visit even more dangerous. Nothing distracts people more from their woes than good old-fashioned jingoism. Now, that's what was happening in China. They'll shoot their plane out of the sky. We're China. Have you seen what's happening in China right now, especially with the economy? When economic crashes occur, they always begin small, locally. I know the guy who discovered the flaws in the system at one of the biggest banks, and it started very small, little teeny thing that nobody else saw. It was the same for the banks in Japan in the 1990s and ours in 2008. You first started hearing about China several months ago, specifically from a Chinese developer named Evergrande. From the New York Times, quote, Evergrande is a huge real estate empire with millions of apartments in cities across China. It also has more than $300 billion in financial obligations, hundreds of unfinished residential buildings, and angry suppliers who have shut down construction sites. Things got so bad, they actually asked their employees to lend them money so they could pay their bills. Thousands of Evergrande jobs were at stake. Several million associated jobs were also at stake. But there was a threat to the state, regional, and small banks that were connected now to the unpayable debt. To call the Chinese system, the real estate system, risky is an insane understatement. I want to show you how the Chinese system works and what makes us very, very different. Okay, so the People's Bank of China, this is the communist bank. They print the money. It's like our Fed. They print the money. They control all the money. It's their central bank. Then underneath that, there are 5 banks. They're still owned by the Chinese Communist Party. They conduct banking business and accept deposits. Okay? This is connected to these. These are connected to these. These are connected. And it's all one source, the Communist Party. Underneath these 5 banks are the 3 banks that handle lending and loans. These are large Chinese banking institutions. They administer hundreds of city and rural banks that are spread out all over the country. So these are the little banks that you would go into if you were at a, small little town in China. Everything, absolutely everything, is connected, and it all goes back here, okay? If something happens in a small village and it can affect a region, then the state-owned lending banks, then the 5 state deposit banks, all the way up to the central bank are all screwed, okay? Now let me show you why Evergrande is such a big deal. Real estate is weird in China, and it operates on something really that sounds very much like what the Germans did with Volkswagen. It was a pre-sale system. Now let's say you're in China and you want to buy a house or an apartment. You first go to the local bank and you ask for a loan. And so you have to put down a lot of money as a deposit. I mean, a lot of money for them. Then the bank gives you the loan. You begin to pay for that house, but there is no house. The house is in your head. You have to go to a developer like Evergrande, give them all of your money that the bank just gave, and then construction would begin. Well, sometimes it takes years before your house is even done, but you're making payments every month. So now what happens if that developer goes insolvent? Construction stops. The potential homeowner then goes, wait a minute, where's my house? And the bank says, where's our money? So the homeowner in China, and this is like death penalty stuff, they begin to stop paying on the loan because there's not going to be a house at the end. And the ripple starts with the small banks and goes all the way to the top. This is happening all over China now. Remember, we see a house, we want it, we go to the bank, get a loan, and we buy the house. They don't. There's no asset. So the Chinese, the banks, could be looking at $350 billion in losses without any collateral. The People's Bank of China is selling off billions in bonds, try to stabilize the system. 500,000 potential homeowners have just stopped paying on their loans. Banks that have been, popping up in rural regions in China, they're going out. People want their money, but the bank doesn't have any money to give. So now they're just telling the people, all your savings, remember the savings and loan thing with, George Bailey? Your money's in that house and that house. Their money is in nobody's house. It doesn't exist. This video I want to show you shows military tanks that had to be brought in to keep people from overrunning the bank, but there's no money there. The banking protests are the largest protest in China in years, and they're doing this in the middle of yet another COVID forced lockdown. So why is China getting so aggressive over Taiwan right now? Well, several reasons. Check out this article from NPR. Quote, in China, the banking scandal is causing some to lose faith in the Communist Party. And there it is. The communists are afraid of their own people, and their own people don't have guns. There's just billions of them. Pelosi just handed them a perfect distraction. And as I will explain on tomorrow's radio, they have also destabilized. Pelosi has destabilized the Xi regime. I'll explain that tomorrow. It's fascinating, but makes everything else unstable. Perfect, right? If the Chinese economy crashes, the shortages and high prices we're now seeing will look like nothing because factories will close in China, shipments will grind to a halt, and a war with Taiwan would close one of the busiest trade routes in the world. So far in 2022, the Strait of Taiwan serviced 88% of the world's largest container ships. 88%. That's what they threatened to close because of her trip. By the way, they're also the biggest manufacturing plants of chips, I mean the high-end chips, in the world. We lose those chips, everything else stops. But it's more than this. China has been very, very busy working on a way to decouple from the system that is collapsing all around them. And the Taiwan situation accelerated their plans. I'm going to show it to you next. I just got a letter in from, I think her name was Kathy today. She said, Glenn, I so relate to you talking about how your hands just couldn't work a few years ago and you started taking Relief Factor and everything got better. Well, Kathy, they did get better. I couldn't tie this stupid scarf if I didn't have Relief Factor. What the heck is happening here? I'm a wreck. Really, I am. Anyway, she said, I got my life back. I got the use of my hands back. If you are trying to, I couldn't have, honestly, this is true. My wife used to have to get up and button my shirts in the morning. I wouldn't have been able to do that with my hands. The pain would have been too much. Now, lucky for you, because you have to look at me, I can do that. Try Relief Factor. It'll change your life. It will. Get your life back. Try the 3-week quick start. If it doesn't work in 3 weeks, probably not going to. 70% of the people who try it, though, go on to order more. Drug-free, natural way. Get your life back. ReliefFactor.com. That's ReliefFactor.com. I want to explain a little bit of how our economic system works. People really don't understand the importance of world reserve currency. The U.S. dollar dominates the global financial system by being the world's reserve currency. It's the reason why we are so wealthy. It is based on the faith and trust in our government that we would never violate rules, that we would never do the wrong thing for the world, that you could use our dollar because it is as good as gold. Okay. Now, what happens when it's not good as gold? Okay. It's Russia, China, India, Brazil, all of these countries have not only our bonds, our treasury bonds, those are loans to us. They buy our dollars, and that with that money, we can print more money so our government can spend more money. Okay, they're done with doing that. But they still have to have U.S. dollars in their vaults because that's the only way you can buy oil. It can only be sold in U.S. dollars. Why? Well, because we have put together a very good system that is in our benefit. We have the World Trade Organization, which puts together all of the trade laws of the world, how we work together, what are the rules. Then you have the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. That is a bank that helps countries grow and in development. They make loans. If a country is in trouble, they will give a bailout. You have the World Bank that does the same thing. Then, you'll remember this because of Russia, we also have SWIFT. This is antiquated now, but this is the way governments and businesses can transfer money from bank to bank anywhere in the world. Okay? It's not like you just lick a stamp and put a bunch of cash in an envelope. It needs to be transferred quickly, and it also has to make sure that it's very, very accurate. We have that. Then we have the world reserve currency. This is our problem. This system works out to be a stick and a carrot. You do what we want. This is where we become bullies. You do what we want, and everything's fine. You step out of line, all of this will be gone. And then you don't have money to buy oil, and everything stops. That's what we threatened with the UK. Now, all of these are in line with the big do-over, okay? All of these have said, yep, we're all in on this, and that's where ESG comes into. This is where they start using sticks and carrots for Exxon all the way down to you. You behave the way the government wants, and you're fine. If you behave differently than what the government wants or what the world wants, then all of a sudden you can't get a bank. You can't get a loan for anything. They shut your money off. Canada did it with the truckers. They just shut your accounts. That's why the Great Reset is so dangerous. And that's why people are starting to wake up and go, wait a minute, what? But we're already seeing this happen with Russia. What they did is what's going to happen to you. When Russia invaded Ukraine, there was one action by the West that changed and accelerated everything. The dollar-dominated system, hundreds of billions of Russian money, it made all of that money go poof, and it's gone. We just ghosted hundreds of billions of dollars that were owned by the Russians. Countries like Russia and China now go, wait. They can just say, I'm out of the system. They can just make my money go away. If I don't agree with him, if I don't do what these people who are all in bed with the West want me to do. You know, America is not the America it used to be. I think maybe decoupling ourselves. Does anybody have a better system? This is what I have told people in the banking and economic community for 20 years. They're like, Glenn, remember I've always said, the dollar is just the floatiest piece of poop in the toilet bowl? They've all said that. We're bad, but we're the best in the world. And I said, but you are banking literally on the idea that no one will come up with a better system. That's insanity to base everything we have off of that idea. Well, they said it would never happen. Well, the Axis was already in the works, but once we did this with Russia, all bets were off. Iran has now announced that it has officially completely ditched the dollar in trade with their growing ally, Russia. They also announced similar trade plans with China and India and Turkey. Iran, Russia, and Turkey met last month and all but admitted a new anti-American alliance. It's called the Axis of Good. As the Western G7 nations met in June, another economic and military pact was seemingly nearing completion simultaneously. The 2022 BRICS summit occurred just 2 days before. And BRICS, it's composed of Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, BRICS. Although it's just 5 countries, their potential is massive. Each country has participation in their own individual trade blocs. Brazil is part of the South American Free Trade Area with 11 members and associates. Russia is part of the Economic Union Free Trade Area with 8 members and growing. India, South Asian Association, 8 members and growing. China has their own trade partnership with 15 members. South Africa agreement has 34 member states. I point this out because this should show you the beginnings that this axis could be a juggernaut, hostile to the U.S. dollar, fast. See, we've played by our rules, and we've forced everybody else arrogantly to play by our rules. You cross us, you're done, because we had the juice to do it. You know, the sign of real power is having the juice to really destroy people, but never, ever doing it. Never threatening people, never being like, hey, you stay in line there. You do it, you build respect from those other countries. Even though you have the ability to do things, You don't do it all the time. And we have been arrogant with our power for a very long time. During the opening for this year's BRICS summit, President Xi was there, and he declared the West was, quote, weaponizing the world economy. We are. We're weaponizing our economy. We're weaponizing the world's economy. We're weaponizing everything because the elites know better. They laid out 75 points that China, quote, urged the West to read. Okay, let me summarize some of the big ones, because I don't think the West read this. For the economic axis of evil, or good as they say, to fully replace the dollar-dominated international system, they must first find a way to operate outside of the IMF, the World Bank, the WTO, the dollar. Well, check this out. Points 37 and 38 are about, quote, enhancing cooperation on supply chains between BRIC countries and partners. It goes into more specifics, but it's clear what this is all about. This is their solution for the World Trade Organization. Point 39 talks about a new development bank, which has just been relocated to Shanghai. Wow, that takes care of the IMF and the World Bank, doesn't it? Yes, it does. Point 49 talks about the new intra-BRICS trade system for making the transactions within the group, which is SWIFT. So now we got that one's gone, that one's gone, that one's gone, that one's gone. Well, luckily we have the dollar, which is the world's currency. Nope. They're going to put together a new world currency, which would circumvent any Western sanctions. So all of our power is gone. If something really bad happens, we can't flex our money, our muscles, not just as America, but the West. Putin said this directly right out in the open during the BRICS summit. They are telling us what they're going to do. They are urging us to pay attention. Have you even heard this story anywhere? Everything I pointed out, that the axis of evil has to do with the dethroning the Western system, is now being worked on. WEF, check. IMF, World Bank, check, check, check. All of it. This is the world that we may have to live under if all of this goes through. And consider this. Brazil is the world's largest soy producer, second largest. Russia, the largest wheat producer. South Africa, top 10 in corn. China, quarter in global grain. India, number 2 in rice. We're screwed if we piss them off anymore. Back in a minute. I was on Megyn Kelly's show for 2 hours today on her podcast, and we talked about a lot. One of them was the great do-over. As I expressed to her, if you don't understand this, you won't understand the world. Please, the book is available everywhere. Make sure you pick a copy up and read it and share it with a friend. I'll see you tomorrow with some really great information on radio. From Dallas, good night, America.